Whispers of the wild. The salt-laced wind carried the scent of thrift and heather as it whipped around the Isle of Skye, a rugged jewel cast adrift in the churning embrace of the Atlantic. For 72 years, Silas MacLeod had been its steadfast sentinel, his life as interwoven with the rhythm of the tides and the cry of the gulls as the granite of the cliffs beneath his boots. His world was the whitewashed tower of the North Point Lighthouse, its unwavering beam a promise against the treacherous currents and hidden reefs that had claimed many a vessel. His solitude, however, was not absolute. 3 years after his wife, Illyra, had been taken by a swift illness, leaving a void as vast as the ocean itself, Silas had found a fledgling golden eagle near the jagged base of the cliffs. Its wing was twisted at an unnatural angle, its downy feathers matted with rain and fear. He'd named her Aura, for the golden halo that seemed to perpetually shimmer around her fierce, intelligent eyes. Nursing Aura back to health had been a slow, painstaking process, a balm to Silas's grieving heart. He'd splinted her wing with careful hands, fed her scraps of fish, and spoken to her in low, comforting Gaelic, the language of his ancestors and the wind itself. As Aura's strength returned, so too did a flicker of warmth to Silas's soul. She became his shadow, her powerful wings a familiar sight against the sky horizon. Theirs was a language of shared glances, the soft rasp of feathers against weathered tweed, the comfortable silence of mutual understanding. The isle itself was a character in their quiet drama. Ancient crofts, their stone walls softened by generations of wind and rain, dotted the landscape like fallen teeth. Sheep grazed on emerald slopes that plunged dramatically into the sea, their bleating a constant, mournful chorus. The air was alive with the skirl of oyster catchers, the deep croak of ravens, and the distant, haunting song of seals basking on hidden skerries. Silas knew every contour of this land, every shift in its volatile moods. He felt its pulse in the granite beneath his feet, tasted its breath in the salty spray, and heard its ancient stories in the rustling of the wind through the long grasses. Aura, in her wildness, connected Silas to this primal heart of nature in a way Illyra, for all their deep love, never could. Illyra had been a creature of hearth and home, her laughter like the crackling of a peat fire on a winter's night. Aura was the untamed spirit of the mountains, her soaring flight a breathtaking spectacle, a reminder of the boundless freedom that still existed in this rugged corner of the world. Their days unfolded in a predictable rhythm. Silas would tend to the lamp, its intricate mechanisms a familiar comfort. Aura would perch on the lantern room railing, her keen eyes scanning the vast expanse of the sea. They would share meals, Silas his simple fare, Aura her freshly caught fish, their companionship a silent testament to the unexpected bonds that life could forge. But the tranquility of their existence held a subtle undercurrent of unease. A series of unusual events had begun to ripple through the small island community. Sheep had gone missing, not to the usual predators, but vanished without a trace. Fishing nets, left overnight, were found ripped and empty. Whispers circulated in the Dunvegan pub, tales of strange lights seen offshore on moonless nights, of unsettling cries carried on the wind that were neither bird nor beast. Silas, grounded in his years of observation, felt a prickle of disquiet. The natural order of the isle seemed disrupted, a delicate balance thrown awry. Even Aura, usually so fearless, had become more watchful, her sharp cries occasionally laced with a note of agitation he hadn't heard before. She would often fix her gaze on the western horizon, her golden eyes narrowed as if searching for something unseen. One crisp morning, as the sun painted the eastern sky in hues of rose and gold, Aura returned from her dawn flight with something clutched in her talons. It wasn't prey. It was a piece of intricately carved driftwood, unlike anything Silas had ever seen on the island. Strange symbols, swirling and fluid, adorned its surface, glowing faintly with an ethereal luminescence even in the daylight. As Silas reached for it, Aura released the wood, her gaze fixed intently on his face. There was urgency in her eyes, a silent communication that transcended words. He picked up the driftwood, its smooth surface cool to the touch. The glowing symbols pulsed gently against his palm, sending a faint tremor through his hand. A cold dread coiled in Silas's stomach. He didn't understand what this strange object was, or where Aura had found it, but he felt, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that it was a harbinger. The whispers of the wild were growing louder, and they spoke of something ancient, something powerful, and something that threatened the fragile peace of their island home. The love he shared with Aura, a beacon in his solitary life, now felt like a fragile flame against shadows on the moor. The discovery of the glowing driftwood cast a long shadow over Silas's days. He turned the smooth piece of wood over and over in his calloused hands, the swirling symbols seeming to writhe beneath his gaze. He'd shown it to old Morag, the island's wisest woman, whose cottage nestled amongst the peat bogs like a slumbering beast. Morag, her face a roadmap of wrinkles etched by wind and time, had peered at the driftwood through rheumy eyes, her silence more unsettling than any pronouncement. "It's old, Silas," she'd finally rasped, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "Older than the stones themselves. It speaks of the Cid, the ancient ones, and the deep magic that sleeps beneath our feet." She couldn't decipher the symbols, but the faint luminescence filled her with a palpable unease. "Be wary, Silas. Some things are best left undisturbed." Morag's words only deepened Silas's apprehension. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, not just for the lighthouse and its guiding light, but for the delicate balance of the island itself. The missing sheep, the ripped nets, Aura's heightened anxiety, it all seemed connected to this mysterious artifact. He tried to recall any old tales Illyra had shared, stories passed down through generations of islanders. There were whispers of creatures from the sea, beings of light and shadow who occasionally interacted with the human world, but these were usually dismissed as folklore, fireside fantasies to ward off the long winter nights. Now, Silas wondered if there was more truth to those stories than he had ever imagined. Aura, sensing Silas's preoccupation, remained close. She would often nudge the driftwood with her beak, her intelligent eyes fixed on his, as if urging him to understand its significance. One afternoon, she became particularly agitated, circling the lighthouse with insistent cries, her gaze repeatedly drawn towards the vast, undulating expanse of the moorland that stretched across the island's heart. Silas followed her silent prompting. Leaving the lighthouse in the capable hands of young Jamie, a lad from the village who occasionally helped with chores, he set out across the moor, the driftwood tucked securely into his pocket. The moor was a tapestry of browns and greens, punctuated by the vibrant purple of heather and the stark white of bog cotton. The air hummed with the buzz of insects and the distant call of a curlew. It was a landscape Silas knew intimately, yet today, it felt different, charged with an unseen energy. As they ventured deeper, Aura soaring ahead and circling back, Silas noticed a change in the moor's flora. Patches of moss, usually a muted green, glowed with a faint, ethereal blue light. Strange, delicate flowers, their petals shimmering with an inner luminescence, bloomed in clusters where they had never grown before. The air here felt cooler, carrying a subtle, almost metallic scent. Suddenly, Aura let out a sharp cry and descended rapidly, landing near a cluster of ancient standing stones that Silas had passed countless times without a second thought. These stones, weathered and lichen-covered, formed a rough circle, their origins lost to the mists of time. But now, Silas saw something he had never noticed before. At the base of one of the tallest stones, nestled amongst the tangled roots of heather, was a small, circular depression filled with water. And the water glowed. It wasn't a harsh, artificial light, but a soft, pulsating luminescence, like captured starlight. As Silas approached, he felt a strange pull, a sense of recognition he couldn't explain. Aura hopped closer to the glowing pool, dipping her beak into the water and then looking expectantly at Silas. Hesitantly, Silas knelt beside the pool. The glowing water reflected his weathered face, making his eyes seem ancient and knowing. He reached out a trembling finger and touched the surface. A jolt, not painful but strangely vibrant, coursed through his hand. The symbols on the driftwood in his pocket pulsed in response, their faint glow intensifying. Then, the water in the pool began to ripple, not from the wind, but from something rising from within its depths. A shape began to coalesce, shimmering and indistinct at first, like heat haze on a summer's day. As it rose further, Silas could make out a form, slender, graceful, and radiating a soft, otherworldly light. It resembled a seal, but its skin shimmered with iridescent colors, and its eyes, large and luminous, held an ancient wisdom. The creature fixed its gaze on Silas, and a voice, not spoken but felt directly in his mind, echoed through his being. The veil thins, keeper of the light. The song of the deep reaches the shores of the land. The balance is threatened. Silas could only stare, his heart pounding in his chest. He understood, with a sudden clarity that pierced through the years of quiet solitude, that the strange events on the island, the glowing driftwood, the altered flora, were all connected to this being, to the Cid of Morrig's tales. And the love he shared with Aura, he now realized, was not just a comfort, but perhaps a crucial part of the unfolding mystery. Aura watched the luminous creature with a calm familiarity, nudging Silas gently as if to reassure him. The shadows on the moor had deepened, revealing a world far more ancient and magical than he had ever imagined. Image prompt for Part 2. A windswept moorland on the Isle of Skye. In the center, a circle of ancient, lichen-covered standing stones. At the base of one stone, a small, circular pool of water glows with a soft, ethereal blue light. Silas, kneeling beside the pool, reaches out to touch the water, his face reflecting the glow. Aura stands close by, watching the pool with calm interest. In Silas's pocket, the faint outline of the glowing driftwood is visible. In the background, the vast expanse of the moor stretches towards the horizon. Echoes of the deep. The mental voice of the seal-like being resonated within Silas long after the shimmering form had dissolved back into the glowing pool. The veil thins, the balance is threatened. The words hung in the air, heavy with an unspoken urgency. Silas looked at Aura, who ruffled her feathers and gave a soft, reassuring cry. He felt a profound sense of connection to her in that moment, a shared understanding that transcended their different forms. She had led him here, to this ancient place, to this messenger from a hidden world. He spent the rest of the day by the standing stones, the glowing pool his silent confidant. He tried to make sense of what he had witnessed, piecing together fragments of island lore and Morrig's cryptic warnings. The Cid, the Ancient Ones, tales spoke of their connection to the sea, to the hidden depths where magic still held sway. Could the recent disturbances on the island be linked to a disruption in their world? As dusk painted the sky in hues of fiery orange and deep violet, Silas felt a growing unease. The usual sounds of the moor, the bleating of sheep, the chirping of insects, seemed muted, replaced by a subtle, almost imperceptible hum in the air. Aura, perched atop one of the standing stones, remained vigilant, her golden eyes scanning the darkening landscape. That night, the storm returned. It wasn't the sudden, violent squall of the previous week, but a slow, deliberate build-up of wind and rain, as if the very elements were agitated. The lighthouse groaned under the relentless assault, and the beam cut through the darkness like a desperate plea. Silas found himself pacing the lantern room, his anxiety mirroring the tempest outside. Suddenly, Aura cried out, a sharp, urgent call that sliced through the roar of the wind. She launched herself from the railing, circling the tower once before flying out towards the sea, her silhouette briefly illuminated by the lamp's powerful beam. Silas's heart leaped into his throat. He rushed to the railing, peering out into the swirling darkness. He could see nothing but the white fury of the waves crashing against the rocks below. Where had Aura gone? Was she in danger? Hours crawled by, each one an eternity of worry. Silas kept the lamp burning bright, his gaze fixed on the tumultuous sea. Just as despair began to set in, a faint shape emerged from the darkness, battling its way through the wind and rain. It was Aura, and she was not alone. Clutched in her talons was another creature, smaller and darker than herself, struggling weakly. As they drew closer, Silas could see it was a young otter, its fur matted and slick with seawater, its breathing shallow and ragged. Aura landed gently on the balcony, releasing the otter onto the wet stone. She nudged it with her beak, a soft, almost tender gesture. Silas knelt beside the trembling creature, his heart swelling with a mixture of relief and wonder. Why had Aura risked herself to save this otter? As he examined the small animal, he noticed something peculiar. Around its neck was a collar made of woven seaweed, and embedded in the collar was a small, smooth stone that pulsed with the same faint blue light he had seen in the pool on the moor. Understanding dawned in Silas's mind like the first rays of the morning sun. The missing sheep, the ripped nets, these weren't random acts. Something was driving the creatures of the sea to the land, something was disrupting the natural order. And Aura, with her innate connection to the wild, had sensed this distress and acted upon it. Her love and compassion extended beyond the boundaries of her own species, a bridge between the air and the sea. He carefully lifted the shivering otter, carrying it inside the warm confines of the lighthouse. Aura followed, her watchful gaze never leaving the small creature. As Silas gently dried the otter with a soft cloth, the blue stone around its neck pulsed again, and a faint, melodic sound, like the singing of distant waves, filled the room. Suddenly, the driftwood in Silas's pocket began to glow intensely, the swirling symbols blazing with light. He pulled it out, his hand trembling. The melodic sound from the otter's collar resonated with the symbols, and a series of images flashed through Silas's mind, swirling currents, shadowy figures beneath the waves, and a deep, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the ocean. He understood then. The veil wasn't just thinning, it was tearing. Something was wrong in the deep, something that was pushing its inhabitants towards the land, disrupting the delicate balance of their world and his. And Aura, his fierce, loving companion, was somehow caught in the middle, her instincts guiding her towards a danger Silas could barely comprehend. The echoes of the deep were growing louder, and they spoke of a crisis that threatened to engulf them all. Image prompt for Part 3. A dramatic night scene at the North Point Lighthouse during a storm. Rain lashes against the lantern room windows, illuminated by the power. The unseen tide. The images that flashed through Silas's mind, triggered by the resonance between the driftwood and the otter's collar, left him shaken. He saw glimpses of a world unseen, a realm of swirling currents and towering kelp forests, now shadowed by an encroaching darkness. He sensed a deep unease emanating from the ocean's heart, a disharmony that was rippling outwards, disturbing the delicate balance of life on Skye. The rescued otter, which Silas named Cory, Gaelic for whirlpool, gradually regained its strength, its sleek fur drying to a rich, dark brown. Aura remained by its side, often preening its fur with gentle touches of her beak. Their interspecies affection was a poignant testament to the disruption they were both sensing, a silent acknowledgement of a shared vulnerability. Over the next few days, more unusual occurrences plagued the island. Seabirds, disoriented and distressed, flocked inland in unprecedented numbers. Fish, usually abundant in the coastal waters, became scarce. Even the tides seemed erratic, receding further than Silas had ever witnessed, only to surge back with unexpected ferocity. Silas knew he couldn't remain a passive observer. The glowing driftwood, the distressed creatures, the whispers of ancient magic, they all pointed towards a crisis that demanded action. He decided to seek out Morag again, hoping that the heightened disturbances might jog her memory, unlock a deeper understanding of the island's ancient lore. The journey across the moor was fraught with a palpable tension. The glowing moss patches had spread, their ethereal light now casting an eerie luminescence over the landscape even during the day. The strange, sapphire-tinged flowers bloomed in even greater profusion, their delicate beauty masking an unsettling strangeness. Aura flew ahead, her sharp cries echoing with a nervous edge. When they reached Morag's cottage, they found the old woman by her peat fire, her face drawn with worry. "The old ways stir, Silas," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The Tir Fothun, the land beneath the waves, is troubled. I feel it in my bones, in the very air I breathe. Silas showed her the driftwood again, its glow now a constant, soft pulse. He described the images he had seen, the shadowy forms in the deep, the feeling of a profound unease. Morag's eyes widened. The Sluak na Mara, she breathed, the Gaelic words heavy with ancient fear. The hosts of the sea, they are not always benevolent. Tales speak of a darkness that can rise from the depths, a creeping shadow that consumes light and life. She recounted fragmented legends of a time long ago when a similar darkness had threatened the island, a time when the Cid and the mortal inhabitants had been forced to unite to banish the encroaching evil. The key to their salvation, the stories whispered, lay in a harmonious connection between the land, the sea, and the creatures that dwelled within them. Morag's words resonated deeply with Silas, especially when he thought of Ora's selfless rescue of Corey. The love and compassion between these two creatures of different realms seemed to echo the ancient wisdom she spoke of. Suddenly, a frantic cry echoed from outside. It was Jamie, his young face pale with fear as he burst through the cottage door. Silas? The sea, it's doing strange things. The boats, they're being pulled under. Silas's blood ran cold. He knew, with a sickening certainty, that the unseen tide had turned deadly. He had to get back to the lighthouse, his beacon of hope, but he also felt an overwhelming urge to understand the source of this encroaching darkness, to find a way to restore the balance before it was too late. Ora, sensing the urgency, launched herself into the air, circling above them with frantic cries. Corey, now recovered, chittered anxiously at Silas's feet. The love and trust, the heart of the gloom. Silas raced back towards the coast, Jamie scrambling to keep pace, the urgency of the boy's words echoing in his mind. Ora soared ahead, a golden arrow against the darkening sky, while Corey, surprisingly agile on land, darted through the heather, keeping close to Silas's boots. The closer they got to the shore, the more palpable the unnatural energy became. The air crackled with a strange static, and the scent of salt was overlaid with a metallic tang. The sight that greeted them was horrifying. Fishing boats, normally bobbing gently in the harbor, were being dragged beneath the surface as if by unseen hands. The water churned and frothed, devoid of its usual life. Distressed cries of gulls filled the air as they wheeled overhead. The tide was indeed behaving erratically, receding to expose stretches of seabed Silas had never seen before, revealing strange, dark shapes that pulsed with a faint, internal luminescence. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that the source of the island's woes lay beneath the waves, in the Tir Fothun. The Sluak na Mara, the shadowy hosts Morag had spoken of, were somehow responsible. But what were they, and what did they want? As Silas stood on the shore, bewildered and desperate, Ora let out a series of piercing cries, circling a particular stretch of water that seemed to roil with an unnatural intensity. She then swooped low, her gaze fixed on Silas, before diving towards the turbulent surface. Without hesitation, Silas plunged into the icy water. He was a strong swimmer, honed by years of living by the sea, but the unnatural currents tugged at him with surprising force. The water was strangely dark, the sunlight unable to penetrate its murky depths. He could feel a faint, rhythmic pulsing beneath the surface, growing stronger as he swam further out, following the direction of Ora's dive. Suddenly, a shape materialized from the gloom. It was one of the dark, luminous forms he had seen on the exposed seabed, but now it was moving, its elongated body gliding through the water with an unsettling grace. Its eyes, glowing with a malevolent green light, fixed on Silas. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through him. This was one of the Sluak na Mara. Just as the creature lunged, a golden streak flashed past Silas. Ora struck the shadowy being with incredible force, her sharp talons tearing at its translucent flesh. The creature recoiled, hissing, its green eyes burning with fury. Silas used the distraction to dive deeper, following the pulsing rhythm that seemed to be emanating from the seabed below. The water grew colder, the pressure increasing. He could feel the pull of a powerful current, drawing him downwards towards an unseen abyss. Then, he saw it. A gaping chasm in the seabed, radiating a sickly green light. Swirling around the edges of the chasm were more of the shadowy creatures, their forms writhing and their eyes glowing menacingly. And at the heart of the chasm, pulsating with a malevolent energy, was a large, amorphous mass of darkness, the source of the green light and the unsettling hum that vibrated through the water. This was the heart of the gloom, the source of the unseen tide that threatened to engulf their world. As Silas watched, horrified, he saw smaller, glowing forms being drawn into the dark mass, their light fading as they were consumed. He recognized their ethereal luminescence. It was the same light that emanated from the strange flowers on the moor, from the pool by the standing stones, from Corey's collar. The Sluak and Mara were draining the life force of the island's magic. Suddenly, he felt a tug on his leg. Corey, the brave little otter, had followed him into the depths, her eyes wide with concern. She nipped at the song of binding. Gasping for breath, Silas broke the surface, the cold air stinging his lungs. Aura was there instantly, circling above him with triumphant cries, her golden eyes filled with concern. Corey surfaced beside him, chittering anxiously. The sight of his loyal companions renewed Silas's determination. He had seen the enemy, the heart of the gloom, and he knew what was at stake. They returned to the lighthouse, the urgency of their discovery hanging heavy in the air. Silas recounted what he had witnessed to Jamie and Morag, his words painting a terrifying picture of a malevolent force draining the island's magical essence. Morag listened intently, her face grim. "The Cridhi Dorsha, the dark heart," she murmured, her voice trembling. "It feeds on the light, on the very soul of Tir Fothun. If it is not stopped, it will consume everything." She explained that the balance between their world and the realm beneath the waves was maintained by a delicate weave of natural energies, amplified by places of power like the standing stones and the glowing pools. The Sluak and Mara were somehow disrupting this weave, drawing the energy into the Cridhi Dorsha, weakening the connection and allowing the darkness to spread. "The key lies in the old ways, Silas," Morag said, her eyes gleaming with a newfound resolve. "In the songs of binding, the ancient rituals that honor the land and the sea. There are still places of power on this island, places where the veil is thin. We must rekindle the light there, strengthen the weave before it unravels completely." Time was running out. The erratic tides were growing more violent, and a strange, oppressive stillness had fallen over the land. Even the hardy sheep huddled together, their usual grazing forgotten. Silas knew they had to act quickly. Morag led them to a hidden cove, a place where bioluminescent seaweed clung to the rocks and the air hummed with a subtle energy. In the center of the cove was a circle of smooth, sea-worn stones, each one radiating a faint warmth. "This is one of the places," Morag explained. "We must channel the island's energy through these stones, create a beacon of light to push back the darkness." As Morag began to chant in ancient Gaelic, her voice rising and falling with the rhythm of the waves, Silas felt a surge of power in the air. The bioluminescent seaweed glowed brighter, and the stones beneath their feet pulsed with warmth. Jamie, his initial fear replaced by a quiet determination, helped Morag gather smooth pebbles, arranging them around the central stones in intricate patterns. Aura and Corey remained close to Silas, their presence a silent source of strength. Aura spread her magnificent wings, her golden feathers catching the faint light, while Corey sat patiently by his feet, her intelligent eyes fixed on Morag. Their unwavering loyalty was a testament to the deep bond they shared, a living embodiment of the harmony Morag spoke of. Silas felt a profound connection to this place, to the land and the sea, to his ancestors who had walked this shore before him. He understood then that the love he felt for Aura and Corey was not just a personal affection, but a part of the island's very essence, a thread in the ancient weave of life. As Morag's chanting reached a crescendo, Silas felt an intuitive pull towards the glowing driftwood in his pocket. He took it out, its symbols now blazing with a brilliant blue light. He held it aloft, and the light seemed to flow outwards, resonating with the energy of the cove. With Morag's chanting, with the silent presence of his animal companions. A beam of pure, white light erupted from the center of the stone circle, piercing the oppressive gloom that had settled over the island. The light pulsed outwards, washing over the turbulent sea, reaching towards the unseen depths. For a moment, everything held its breath. Then, a chorus of ethereal sounds echoed from the sea, not the malevolent hissing of the Sluak na Mara, but a resonant, harmonious song, a symphony of the deep. The erratic tides began to calm, the unnatural stillness lifted, and a sense of peace at the deepening shadow. The beacon of light in the hidden cove had brought a temporary respite, a lull in the encroaching darkness. The erratic tides calmed, the distressed cries of the seabirds subsided, and the oppressive stillness lifted from the land. But Silas felt a lingering unease, a sense that they had only pushed back the tide, not stemmed its source. The harmonious song from the deep had faded, replaced by a disquieting silence. Over the following days, Silas, Morag, and Jamie worked tirelessly, reinforcing the places of power around the island. They chanted ancient verses by the glowing pools, arranged stones in forgotten patterns, and tended to the strange, sapphire-tinged flowers, nurturing their ethereal light. Ora and Corey remained their constant companions, their presence a tangible link to the wild heart of Skye. Silas found himself relying on Ora's keen senses more than ever. She would often fly out over the sea, her sharp cries conveying subtle shifts in the water's energy, warning them of approaching disturbances. Corey, too, played her part, her sensitivity to the underwater vibrations providing early warnings of any renewed activity from the Sluak na Mara. One particularly still morning, Ora returned from her dawn flight with a frantic urgency in her cries. She circled Silas repeatedly, her gaze fixed on the western horizon, the same direction she had looked towards when she first brought the glowing driftwood. Following her instinct, Silas climbed to the top of the lighthouse, his heart pounding with premonition. In the distance, a dark shape was emerging from the mist-shrouded sea. It was vast and amorphous, a swirling mass of shadow that seemed to absorb the very light around it. A sickly green luminescence pulsed from within its depths, and the unsettling hum that Silas had felt in the underwater chasm now vibrated through the air, growing stronger with each passing moment. The Kridhi Dorsha, Morag whispered, her voice filled with dread as she joined Silas on the balcony. It is not defeated. It is growing stronger. The dark mass moved with an unnatural speed, its tendrils of shadow reaching out across the water like grasping claws. The sea around it churned violently, and a palpable cold emanated from its core, chilling Silas to the bone even from the height of the lighthouse. Ora cried out defiantly, launching herself towards the approaching darkness, a golden warrior against the encroaching gloom. But the sheer size and power of the Kridhi Dorsha were overwhelming. Tendrils of shadow lashed out, ensnaring Ora, her powerful wings struggling against their suffocating grip. Silas's blood ran cold. He watched in horror as his beloved companion was drawn towards the monstrous entity, her golden light dimming as the shadows enveloped her. A raw cry of anguish tore from his throat. Corey, sensing Ora's distress, let out a series of frantic shitters and plunged into the churning sea, swimming with desperate speed towards the darkness. Silas knew it was futile, a tiny otter against such immense power, but her loyalty and love mirrored his own despair. Torn between his grief and a desperate need to act, Silas looked at Morag. Her face was etched with grim determination. "There is one more place of power, Silas," she said, her voice low but firm. "An ancient spring hidden deep within the mountains. Its waters hold a pure, untainted magic, a power that might be able to sever the Kridhi Dorsha's connection to our world. But the path is perilous, guarded by ancient spirits." Silas knew what he had to do. He couldn't let Ora be consumed by the darkness. He couldn't let their island be swallowed by this creeping gloom. The love he felt for Ora and Corey, the fierce loyalty they had shown him, gave him a strength he didn't know he possessed. "Take me there, Morag," he said, his voice hoarse but resolute. "We have to fight for the wellspring of light. Leaving Jamie to tend the flickering light of the lighthouse, Silas and Morag began their arduous trek into the Skye Mountains. The landscape grew increasingly rugged, the familiar green slopes giving way to jagged peaks of gray granite, shrouded in mist that clung like ghostly fingers. The air was thin and cold, and the oppressive silence that had fallen over the island was even more pronounced here, broken only by the mournful cry of a distant buzzard. Morag, despite her age, moved with a surprising agility, her knowledge of the ancient paths guiding them through treacherous terrain. She spoke of the mountain spring, Tobar Solet, the wellspring of light, a place revered by the old ones for its pure and potent magic. Legend claimed its waters held the untainted essence of creation, a force capable of dispelling even the deepest darkness. As they climbed higher, the influence of the Cridhi Dorsha became palpable. Patches of shadow clung to the rocks, refusing to dissipate even under the weak sunlight that occasionally pierced the mist. Strange, twisted flora, leached of all color, grew in desolate patches, their forms unnaturally contorted. The very stones beneath their feet felt cold and lifeless. Silas's heart ached with worry for Aura and Corey. He could still see the image of Aura struggling against the suffocating shadows, Corey's brave little form swimming towards the overwhelming darkness. The thought of their love and loyalty fueled his weary limbs, pushing him onward despite the biting wind and the treacherous climb. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Morag led him to a hidden crevice, concealed behind a waterfall that cascaded down a sheer cliff face. Stepping through the icy curtain of water, Silas found himself in a small, sheltered grotto. In the center, a pool of water shimmered with an ethereal, silver light. This was Tobar Solet. The air here hummed with a vibrant energy, a stark contrast to the oppressive stillness outside. The silver light of the spring seemed to pulse with a gentle rhythm, radiating a feeling of profound peace and purity. The heart of the mountain, Morag whispered, her voice filled with reverence. Its magic is ancient and strong, but it must be wielded with a pure heart, Silas. Its power responds to compassion and love. As Silas approached the spring, he felt a pull, a sense of recognition similar to what he had felt at the glowing pool on the moor, but far more potent. He saw visions in the shimmering water, fleeting images of Aura soaring freely across the sky horizon, of Corey playing amongst the kelp forests, of Illyra's gentle smile. These were the things he held dear, the light in his life that the Cridhi Dorsha threatened to extinguish. He knew what he had to do. Taking the glowing driftwood from his pocket, its blue light now dimmed and flickering, he knelt by the spring. He closed his eyes, focusing all his love for Aura and Corey, his deep connection to the island, his unwavering hope for their survival. He pictured their faces, their loyalty, the warmth of their presence in his solitary life. Then, with a trembling hand, he submerged the driftwood in the silver light of the spring. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the water began to glow brighter, the silver light intensifying, flowing into the driftwood, revitalizing its fading luminescence. The symbols on the wood blazed with a pure, white light, mirroring the light of the spring. Silas felt a surge of energy coursing through him, a feeling of profound connection to the very soul of the island. He raised the driftwood, now a conduit of pure magic, and directed its light towards the west, towards the looming shadow of the Cridhi Dorsha. A beam of pure, white energy erupted from the driftwood, cutting through the mist and the oppressive gloom. It struck the Cridhi Dorsha with the force of a lightning bolt. The dark mass recoiled, its sickly green light flickering violently. A chorus of anguished cries echoed across the water. As the beam of light continued to strike the Cridhi Dorsha, tendrils of shadow began to dissipate, revealing glimpses of the forms trapped within, not just Aura and Corey, but other creatures of the sea, their light dimmed and fading. Silas focused all his will, all his love, into the beam of light. He thought of Aura's fierce spirit, Corey's playful nature, the beauty of their island home. The light intensified, pushing back the darkness, severing its connection to the stolen magic. With a final, agonizing shriek, the Cridhi Dorsha imploded, its shadowy mass dissolving into nothingness. A wave of pure, revitalizing energy washed over the sea. The oppressive gloom lifted completely, replaced by the soft glow of the returning sunlight. And then, Silas saw them. Aura and Corey, weakened but alive, emerged from the dissipating shadows, their light returning. Aura soared into the sky with a triumphant cry, circling the lighthouse in joyous flight. Corey swam towards the shore, her sleek fur gleaming in the sunlight. Silas descended from the mountains with Morag, his heart overflowing with relief and gratitude. Jamie greeted them with tears of joy. As Aura landed on Silas's arm and Corey nuzzled against his legs, he knew they had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, their bond of love and loyalty their greatest strength. The Tobar Sola had saved them, its pure magic amplified by Silas's love for his wild companions. The balance was restored to Skye, the whispers of the wild once again filled with the harmonious song of life. The story of Silas, Aura, and Corey reminds us of the profound and often unseen connections that exist between humans and the natural world. It highlights the power of compassion, loyalty, and the inherent magic that resides within the delicate balance of our ecosystems. Just like the Kridhi Dorsha threatened the light of Skye, so too does a creeping darkness threaten the vibrant biodiversity of our planet. Habitats are being destroyed, species are going extinct, and the intricate web of life is being torn apart. You, the reader, have the power to be a beacon of light against this deepening shadow. Just as Silas drew upon the pure magic of the mountain spring, you can tap into your own wellspring of compassion and take action to protect the natural world and the incredible creatures we share it with. Here are a few ways you can make a difference. Support conservation organizations. Donate your time or resources to groups working to protect endangered species and their habitats. Every contribution, no matter how small, makes a difference. Make sustainable choices. Reduce your carbon footprint, choose eco-friendly products, and be mindful of your consumption habits. Educate yourself and others. Learn about the challenges facing our planet and share your knowledge with friends and family. Advocate for change. Contact your elected officials and urge them to support policies that protect the environment and wildlife. Connect with nature. Spend time in the natural world, appreciate its beauty, and foster a deeper understanding of its interconnectedness. Let the love and loyalty depicted in Aura's song inspire you to become a guardian of our planet's precious light. Together, we can push back the darkness and ensure a vibrant,